Hey guys, let's talk about my top favorite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lenses that I use at pretty much every single wedding. Okay, so before I get started, obviously everything I'm going to show you today is just my choice, the way I shoot, the way I'm comfortable shooting. I feel like I can shoot pretty efficiently with a smaller set of lenses. It may seem like there's a lot of lenses here, but really I only carry pretty much these. These may stay in my car or even back at the studio. So you're going to find your own path. This is just mine. This is not the definitive way to shoot a wedding. I'm just going to show you how I typically shoot a wedding. And so to keep that in mind, you're going to find your own path. Watch a bunch of different videos. Find what works for you. So the lens focal length choices I'm talking about today will work on a full frame camera. So if you shoot crop sensor, just keep that in mind. It's going to be a little bit different for you. But I am talking about full frame camera and the focal lengths that I choose on a full frame camera. Okay, so let's jump right into it. I could probably get away with just using 2 lenses at every single wedding. This would be my 24-70 and my 85. It's pretty much the look of about 90% of my day. But I do carry more lenses than just that. Now I do shoot Nikon. If you shoot Canon or Sony or even Fuji or any other brand, it doesn't matter. Most of them make some kind of comparable focal length choices in their lineup. And other companies like Sigma, Tamron, things like that, or companies like that, they also make similar focal length ranges. So let's just talk about the beginning of the day, the beginning of a wedding. I'm going to have a 24-70 on one camera and my macro lens, my 1.5, on the other camera because of 2 things. I'm going to walk in, I don't know what I'm walking into. I want to get some shots quickly, and I may want to shoot wide, I may want to zoom in and shoot a little tighter. This is going to give me some safe shots almost immediately. I don't have to switch lenses right away. So this will get me started. And the macro lens, I like to start with my detail shots first. So I'm going to do my shoes, jewelry, rings, things like that. So I'm going to get that done first and get that out of the way. Again, it's just how I like to approach it. Once I put away the macro lens, I'm going to switch out and put my 85 on my second camera. And this is going to allow me to kind of back up and get some tighter shots of the bride and get ready, hair and makeup. I'm not going to be up in their face with this 85. I can back up a little bit and get the shots that I need while I'm still able to get some wider shots with my 24-70. Okay, so I'm going to finish out my getting ready shots with these 2 lenses for the most part. Now, there are some variations of that. So when I walk into a room, if I know what I'm getting into, or if I have time, or maybe I have a second shooter who's also using a 24-70, I may swap out that 24-70 for a 35mm. Okay. Now, both my 85 and my 35, these are both 1.4 versions. You can get away with 1.8 versions of these same lenses, the 35 and the 85, even a 50mm. Go for the 1.8 version, and obviously you're going to save a lot of money. It's also going to keep your camera bag a lot lighter. They're typically lighter lenses. You can even get some older versions, which may be a little bit slower to focus, but you're going to save a lot of money. So I may switch out to the 35 if I have a second shooter who's using a 24-70. Now the 35 is going to allow me to go a little bit lower on my aperture and get some of that blurry background, some nice bokeh in some of the images. So I don't always take the 35. I do like it, but for the way I shoot, when I'm working really quickly and fast, the 35 doesn't always fit the time frame that I have to work with. And I just find that the 24-70 is a lot more versatile. I can get a lot more shots off quicker with 24-70. It may not be as artistically appealing to some people because I'm not getting a super blurry background. This only goes down to 2.8. This goes down to 1.4. But again, just personal preference. I like to work fast and efficiently. The 24-70 is going to be usually my go-to lens. But the 35 is definitely an option for certain situations. We got the getting ready stuff done. We've used the 24-70, the macro, and the 85. And again, sometimes we use the 35. We've already talked about that. We'll move on to the ceremony. Let's talk about the ceremony next. So what would I walk into for this ceremony? So when I show up at the church or the hall or wherever they're getting married at, I pretty much start off with 24-70 and again still my 85. You may have grandparents who are getting pinned with flowers. This allows me to back up a little bit and still zoom in not zoom in, it's a prime lens. It allows me to grab some shots from a distance, but shooting out at 1.4, I can kind of knock out the background pretty quickly and get some nice detail shots of people still getting ready at the church by using my 85. Again, you can use the 1.8 version. It'll still do just as good or almost just as good. No one's ever going to notice the difference. So beyond showing up with these two lenses, I like to get a few establishing shots of the church, whether it's inside, outside, like the outside of the church or even the inside of an empty church before anything happens. I like to get a nice wide shot. Sometimes the 24-70 doesn't quite give me that. Now, if it's a very interesting church, I want to shoot the whole thing. If the church isn't that interesting, I'm still just going to use my 24-70 to get that establishing shot of the outside of the church and the inside of the church. It's usually going to be good enough. Now, if it's a big church or it's a lot of detail and I really want to showcase this thing, I want to shoot really wide. Now, again, I shoot full frame, so I'm looking for like a 14 or 15 millimeter shot of this church. Now, I have the 14-24 Nikon lens. Now, this thing is heavy. It's a lot of glass. It's just a heavy lens. Now, it's super sharp, but the trade-off is the weight. I don't want to carry this extra weight in my camera bag if I don't have to. And I found out I don't really have to. I'm only taking a couple of shots with this lens, so it's just a lot of weight for very little use. So this pretty much stays in my office at my studio, and I'll use it for very specific purposes, which is usually a commercial project. For weddings, I usually don't use the 14-24, mainly because of the weight. If it was lighter, I would totally use it. So what do I use instead? I use a cheap 14 millimeter, I think it's 14, yeah, broken on eBay special. Now, when you shoot this thing around f8, I've went down as low as 5.6 when it's really not a lot of light inside the church, but f8 is the sweet spot. It's manual focus, so you have to manually focus the lens. However, my Nikon D750 allows me to see some focus confirmation in the form of a little green light or red light, I forget what it is, inside the camera, inside the viewfinder. So I'll point to a subject, I'm going to half shutter my camera, I'm going to focus until that light comes on, and I'll know that it's in focus. And where do I focus at? I'm typically focusing in the middle of the church. If it's the church, I'm shooting the inside, like the middle row of the pews, so I can get pretty much maximize my depth of field. I know most people say focus a third of the way into the frame, but someplace between a third of the frame or halfway into the frame is where I'm going to set my focus point at f8 with this lens, and it's sharp enough. You know, most of these pictures are going to end up in a 10x10 album. They're never really going to print out the picture of a church. So this lens, I'm telling you, it's a trade-off, but it's sharp enough to get the shot that I need, and it's light. So it's a cheaper version, maybe $400, I'm not sure, versus $2,000. So don't think you have to spend big bucks to get that wide shot. You can totally get away with using a manual lens. Get it out of your head that you have to have autofocus. You have to have the best of everything. You can totally get a couple cool shots out of a cheaper lens like this. So that stays with me pretty much everywhere that I go. So once all my establishing shots are done and my detail shots are done, some of my getting ready shots are done, guests are coming in, I'm going to put the 14 millimeter away, and I still have the 24-70 on my other camera. I'm going to switch out to my 70-200. Now, it's a big lens, it's heavy. The only time of the day I really use this lens is for the ceremony. I like staying back a little bit and zooming in, so I don't bother the guest. I'm not bothering the bridal party, and I'm certainly not going to bother the officiant, whoever's officiating the wedding. You know those people hate photographers. Okay, I don't care what they tell you. They may say you can go anywhere that you want, but I'm telling you, they don't want you up there near the couple. So using something like a 70-200 is going to get you in close without bothering anybody. I tell all my photographers to work here, don't ever go past where the family pews are, where the families are sitting. Stay somewhere behind them. Try to stay on the side of the aisles. Creep up the center if you need to a little bit, but for the most part, you want to use a longer lens to get in close and get those shots that you need without bothering anybody. So 24-70 on one camera, 70-200 on the other camera. This is how I'm going to start the ceremony. I'll typically be near the front whenever she's coming down the aisle, so I'll be right up near the front someplace. I will check with the officiant. I'm going to get those shots of her coming down the aisle. I can also back up and get a few shots of the groom as he's looking at his bride walking down the aisle. But these two lenses are going to do all that for me that I need. Okay. If it's a really low lit church and really dark, I may have to switch out to my 35 and 85. But for the most part, the cameras we use now have capabilities to shoot really high ISOs. These lenses are just fine. Again, those pictures at the church are not always going to be blown up real big. They may be inside of a 10x10 album. So shooting a 2.8 and higher ISOs is not really a problem for most of the shots that we do for wedding photography. So once the ceremony is over, I put this monstrosity back in the bag. It's heavy, and I don't want to carry this thing all day long. I don't want to shoot with it. I love it. I absolutely do. If they made a smaller one that was still 2.8, I would probably use it all day long. However, it's too heavy. I don't want to carry it. So it goes back in the bag. And then I go back to the 24-70 setup and my 85 setup for the family formals, okay? So if I'm inside of a church, I'm pretty much gonna use the 24-70 for all my family formals. I do have some external lights set up to make sure I get the best possible image for my clients. I'm pretty much gonna be using the 24-70 so I can zoom in, zoom out, and just get a bunch of clean shots really quickly of the family formals right after the ceremony. Once it gets down to just the bride and groom, once the family shot, the bridal party shot, I will probably put this one away and go back to my 85 and try to find some more natural light shots for my couple inside the church, whether it's by a window or if it's a really well-lit church, I can do some stuff in the aisle. I may even still use some extra lighting if I need to, but for the most part, I'm going to shoot my couples with my 85mm because that's my favorite focal length for couples, for a single person, whether it's a bride or a groom. I'm going to use the 85 for most of my, I'll call them like my setup type shots, my more formal shots, and where I'm posing something, or if I'm actually building an image that I'm posing, I'm going to use my 85. That's just the look that I like. Some photographers like the look of a 35 all day long. Hey, that's great. You want to use a 50? That works well for you too. I use the 85 on a full frame. Now, if you shoot a crop sensor camera, say you're a second shooter and you use a crop sensor, nothing wrong with that. You may want to grab a 50mm to get the same focal length look that I would get with my 85. So if you're a crop sensor shooter, definitely pick up a 50mm lens and it's going to look just as good, almost as good as an 85 on a full frame camera. So again, I'm going to shoot all my creative shots, all my setup shots, all my post shots of the couple with the 85, and that's inside and outside of it, around the church. Once all the formal stuff is done inside the church, we're typically going to go someplace else, whether it's outside the church or to another location, and we usually take the bridal party and the couple with us. Well, that would make sense. We'll take the couple with us to take the photos. But I'm usually going to take a 24-70 one camera and an 85 on the other. 24-70 is going to allow me to get a lot of wide shots of the whole bridal party, and the 85 is going to let me go back and get some shots of the couple the way I like to shoot. Again, it's just a personal choice. I like the look of an 85. So we may go to another location. Now, if I have a second shooter, I may vary this a little bit. If I have a second shooter, because sometimes I do shoot by myself a lot. I'm very comfortable with that. I've been doing it for years. I really don't mind. I know some photographers think that's nuts. Starting out, you probably shouldn't do that. You probably should take a second shooter just to be safe. But I do shoot a lot on my own, and I do not mind doing it. But if I do have a second shooter, which I do about 50% of the time, I may not always take the 24-70. Sometimes I will grab my 35mm, which usually stays in the car. I will take the 35mm and swap that out, just so I have a little bit more depth of field to play with, a lower f-stop range that I can kind of play with, and let the second shooter do some of the wider shots with the 24-70, and I will use these two lenses here, my 85 and my 35. But again, most of the time this stays in the car, because I'm really focused on the bride and groom. That's really my thing, is to get shots of the bride and groom, and my 85 is going to give me exactly what I want. So if we're going to take any fun pictures with the couple and the bridal party, sometimes I'll grab my fisheye and take this, and sometimes I may even take the 14mm Roku, or at least have these close by so I can grab them for any kind of unique, really wide shots that I may want to do with them. So these will be close, sometimes in a little backpack that I carry when I'm walking around, because I carry two bags. I carry a backpack and a roller bag. Neither one of them are very big. They're both very versatile in how I want to split up my day and split up the gear that I'm carrying at different parts of the day. So I may carry these for some fun pictures. I don't overuse them. I'll use them for a couple pictures, if at all, but they are kind of neat to use. So once all the more formal and pose shots are done with the couple and the bridal party, and now it's time to go on to the reception. So once we get to the reception, I pretty much take the 24-70 on one camera so I can get my grab and go shots, like my table shots, my get together shots. I call them grab and go shots. I'm sure the photographers call it the same thing or something else. The 24-70 is going to give me a wide range of getting any of the shots that I may need at any given time. Someone's going to walk up to you and say, "Hey, take my photo." 24-70. Someone's going to say, "Hey, my family's here. Take a picture of our big family of 50 people." 24-70 is going to get that. So it stays on one camera almost the entire day. My other camera, I'm going to have a even wider lens on there. I'm either going to have the fisheye, or I'm going to have a 14mm on that lens. It just kind of depends on. I may mix it up a little bit, because for some of my party shots, if there's a big crowd, a big group, I want to get in there and have fun with these guys. I'm going to get some nice wide shots. So I'm going to be part of the party. For the most of the part throughout the day, I'm going to back off and zoom in and get those shots without anybody noticing me. Once I'm at the reception, there's dancing going on and there's crowds going on, people at the bar, I want to get in and shoot tight. I want the viewer to feel like they were there. I want the couple to go back and look at their pictures and feel like they were in that crowd. That's why I shoot really wide at the reception when there's crowds. Now, things like the first dance of the couple, any kind of father-daughter dance, mother and son dance, I will grab the 85 to get some of those shots, or if I carry it in my main bag, I will go back to 70 to 200 to get a few of those shots so I can kind of zoom in without bothering a couple and get some of those shots. So this will stay close for some of those special dances, or the 85, kind of depending on how big the room is, how much room I have to work with. For the most part, I do go to the 85. It's usually enough. I can even use the 105 macro is still a decent focal length for getting some shots for the first dance. Or if I need more distance, I will use the 70 to 200. That's for the special dances. Once the special dances are done, these lenses are pretty much out of the way. And I'm focusing on wider shots throughout the night. I want to feel like, again, I want the viewer to feel like they're part of the party. So when the couple's looking at these pictures down the road, they can feel like they were in there. Now, at some point throughout the night, I like to take my couples back outside, whether it's for a sunset picture or a special nighttime shot. For the most part, I'm either going to use my 24 to 70 or my 85. So if it's a sunset picture and I'm not using any external lighting, I'm going to use my 85 to get some of those pictures. Again, it's just the focal length that I like. A variation of that is some photographers like the 50, some photographers even like the 35. Personal choice, totally acceptable, totally understand. For me, the 85 has been my go-to focal length for probably the last 14, 15 years. It's just what I like. It's the look that I'm going for. It's the look I think my clients are used to. Okay, so this is my little man Carter, my son. You gotta wave to the camera, Carter. Wave. Okay, he's gonna help me out here. Can you hold that? So Carter's going to hold the 24 to 70. If I'm going to do any kind of nighttime shot, I'm going to use this lens right here. It's just, I can zoom in and zoom out. If I get down low to the ground, I don't have to move my body. I can kind of shoot really wide if I want to, or zoom in, get a little bit tighter. Does it get heavy? Can you see yourself there? You got it? Okay, so I typically don't use a prime lens for that, although I could, but I usually use some kind of off-camera lighting. So the 2.8, 24 to 70 is a very versatile lens for that nighttime shot. It's what I use. You can use whatever you want. Some people like the prime. They can shoot a little bit lower on their aperture, but for nighttime shots, I don't necessarily need a really low aperture lens. I don't need that really shallow depth of field that a prime will give me. The 24 to 70 2.8 is good enough for me. So there you have it. Those are my top 6 lenses that I use for weddings. It's just what I use. Every photographer is a little bit different. Some photographers use more lenses. Some of them use even less lenses. Some photographers focus on mainly just using all primes. Again, it's just what I use. So I'm not going to tell you this is the only way to do it. It's just the way I like to do it. I do have some other options if I feel like switching things up a little bit. I talked about the 35 and the 14 to 24. Occasionally I use that zoom wide, ultra wide lens. But I do have the 50 as well. I just don't use it a whole lot for weddings. But there you have it. Any questions, comments? Go ahead and leave it in the comment section, right? Say, leave me a question. Say, ask me a question. I'll try to help. All right. So that's the end of the video. Carter, say bye. Bye. Thanks for watching. Say thanks for watching.